to admit that their estimates of the bailout cost in the Southeast were too low. They will need more than the $15.2 billion original estimate, and the taxpayer will be footing the bill. Reaching a feverish pitch for both political parties, but those impassioned pleas for money coming through the mayor and the TV set make stages. A group calling itself Americans for Bush has raised over $1 million. The official Bush campaign says it hasn't sanctioned or received money from the group. After public outcry, the Americans for Bush group has agreed to refund contributions from unhappy voters. Terry Keenan has more.
CNN has received calls from around the country from unsuspecting contributors who thought they were making donations directly to the Bush campaign. Most were retirees like Lee Sylvester, who gave more than $200 to Americans for Bush without knowing most of that money was being plowed back into more direct mail appeals for more funds. At a press conference in Washington Thursday, Americans for Bush founder Elizabeth Bidet defended her group's fundraising activities.
Our purpose with NISPAC, as well as with Americans for Bush, has been to implement a grassroots effort dedicated to offering an avenue for the average American to participate in the political process.
Nevertheless, Americans for Bush now says it will refund donations from those average Americans who thought that avenue was sanctioned by the Bush campaign. The address to write for those refunds is Americans for Bush, 1919 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20006. As for the Bush campaign, it says it's delighted by Americans for Bush willingness to refund any donations. Terry Keenan, CNN Business News, New York.
The Senate will vote today on a bill to curb textile, apparel, and shoe imports. The bill would freeze textile and apparel imports next year at 1987 levels, and in later years allow just a 1% gain. Proponents of the bill argue these industries were hurt by a wave of imports in the early 80s from Asia, while the Reagan administration asserts the competition from the Far East has made the textile industry more efficient, and that U.S. trade problems are a thing of the past. The Commerce Secretary William Verity has arrived in Japan with a delegation of American business executives looking for ways to pump up sales of certain American products in Japan. Japanese trade officials have promised to help, but as Brian Jenkins reports from Tokyo, it could take some time for that cooperation to pay off.
The latest U.S. trade delegation to Japan is promoting American-made goods which may hold great appeal for the newly affluent Japanese, sports and leisure equipment, furniture, pet foods, and jewelry. Japan's Ministry of Trade is backing the effort, clearing the way for American companies to sell such products directly to retailers here. The project reflects a friendlier spirit in trade relations since Secretary of Commerce William Verity came here last fall and pressed Japan to open more construction projects to American firms.
If nothing happens, there will be a very difficult time to try to keep our Congress from not retaliating in some way.
The two countries finally settled the construction issue in May, but Japan's promise to give American firms a fair chance to do business here has not really been put to the test. June saw the signing of an accord to phase out Japan's import quotas on beef and oranges by 1991, and in its financial markets, Japan has taken a number of steps this summer to allow more access for foreign firms. The top economic advisor to President Reagan in Tokyo this week said the tiny concessions Japan's made over the past 4 years have added up to major progress in financial decontrol.
And I think there are a few giant strides remaining to be accomplished.
How quickly those strides are taken may depend in part on the size of the trade gap between the U.S. and Japan. As long as it keeps shrinking, the American side is bound to be less forceful in pushing for market access here, and the Japanese will feel less pressure to open up. Brian Jenkins, CNN, Tokyo.
And President Reagan's chief economic advisor, Beryl Sprinkle, says the U.S. will push Japan to open up its agricultural markets. He says U.S. officials will say
The bill will pass the Senate next week. Patricia Ox, CNN, the White House.
It is now 4 minutes past the hour. The Bush and the caucus campaigns have set a date for one presidential debate and have tentatively scheduled a second one. The first is set for 2 weeks from Sunday at Wake Forest University in North Carolina. The second is to be October 13th or 14th and perhaps in Los Angeles. A lot of details have yet
programs last evening at this $1,000 a person fundraiser in Manhattan. Caucus met with Jesse Jackson for several minutes, but the substance of their talk was not revealed. The $5 million raised last night brings to $30 million. The party has stashed away in its victory fund to be spent on a presidential ticket or on Democratic candidates across the country.
We are approaching now 6 minutes past the hour. It's Friday. We have a weekend ahead of us, and we've got some serious weather in the forecast today. Valerie Ross monitoring the hurricane situation. Hurricane watch or warning? Marianne, it's hurricane watch so far, mostly because the weather system we're referring to has not yet reached hurricane strength. Still tropical storm Florence. Florence is just to the north, about 315 miles, or rather south of New Orleans, supporting now 65-mile-per-hour winds. Another 10-mile-per-hour increase could bring her to hurricane strength, and there have been hurricane watches issued from Port Arthur, Texas, over to Apalachicola, Florida. As the system drifts northward about 7 or 8 miles an hour, it is moving toward the New Orleans and Louisiana coastline. Tides already running about 2 feet above normal east of the Mississippi in New Orleans and also on south